After starting a wash cycle on a Whirlpool brand washing machine, specifically from the line you can find in the description below, the error code F04 appears on the display. This means there is an error, in other words, an anomaly or a fault related to the water heating system. Before we look at how to intervene in practice, specifically which parts of the washing machine to check and how to test them, let's first see what behavior actually occurs in the washing machine before the error appears. In fact, once we've set a program, obviously with a wash temperature that's not cold, the washing machine will start washing and will continue for at least 40 to 50 minutes. This is actually the maximum time the washing machine allows for the water to reach the set temperature. After this time has passed, the washing machine checks. Specifically, through the control board and all the internal components, it detects that the preset water temperature hasn't been reached and triggers an error, displaying this error code and interrupting the wash cycle that was set. This error code basically occurs during long programs. Sometimes it can happen during short wash cycles, but for example, in a short wash, even if there is a heating problem, this type of error might not occur. In the same way, if we have this kind of issue with the appliance and want to make absolutely sure that it's actually a heating problem, we can set a long wash cycle, such as the heavy duty or intensive cycle, and set the temperature to cold. In this case, since the heating element does not activate to heat the water, the error code will not appear because the machine is not trying to heat the water at all. That said, the components involved in this process and which we should carefully test to check if they're working properly are the heating element, the NTC sensor, and of course we should also check the connections, specifically the plugs on the two components we've just mentioned. It's important to ensure that these connections are secure and free from any visible damage or corrosion. Finally, if these components are found to be working correctly, we should then proceed to check the electronic control board, which is responsible for managing the operation of the entire system. Let's remember that with all error codes, even if certain specific components or parts of the appliance are indicated as being responsible, the electronic control board can always, in fact, be the underlying cause. To carry out the procedure, the first thing we'll do is disconnect the power supply, so unplug the cord from the socket. Then, after removing the washing machine's rear panel, we'll focus our attention. And then we'll see how to perform the test specifically on these two components. Once the back panel of the washing machine has been removed, we have access to the two components that can cause the F04 error, namely the heating element and the NTC sensor. So now we're going to test them. We'll start by disconnecting all the connectors to have a clear view of everything we're about to do. With the help of a multimeter, we're going to measure the values of the heating element and the NTC sensor. Let's start by examining the value of the heating element. With the multimeter set to the ohm scale and specifically to the lowest available scale, which is 200 kilo ohms, we'll carefully place the two probes on the two terminals of the heating element just like this. Here, in this case, on this heating element, therefore we should get a value that roughly speaking goes from 20 to 30 ohms up to 35 ohms. And so we can see that the result confirms that the heating element in this case is working properly. Let's do a test anyway, always swapping the probes as well to make sure we get the same result, which tells us that the heating element is indeed working. If, on the other hand, we had not gotten this value from the heating element, we could have determined that the element is faulty, that it is not working, and to solve the problem we would have had to replace the heating element. Another functionality test we need to perform is on the NTC sensor. In the same way, at this point, we will set the tester to the 200 kilo ohm range, and we will place the tester's two probes inside the resistor where these two small points are. Here's one and the other right next to it. In this case, the NTC sensor should return a value of approximately 20 kilo ohms. In this case, we have exactly 20.6 kilo ohms, which indicates that the temperature sensor is working. However, there could be an issue with the temperature sensor that appears when the water inside is heated, meaning it doesn't accurately detect the change in temperature. For this reason, to check it, we would eventually need to remove the NTC sensor from here. So to do that, we would need to slightly loosen this screw. This screw basically holds a gasket that tightens the heating element, the NTC sensor inside the heating element, and currently prevents it from coming out. So at this point, using a pair of pliers, we will slightly loosen this screw. Okay, and we will pull the sensor outward. Okay. There we go, now we have the sensor outside. We'll perform the same test, but this time we'll heat the front part of the sensor to simulate the water heating up, and actually check if during the washing process with water heating, the sensor responds and therefore reacts to the stimulus of the heating. So we'll carefully heat it up with the lighter, and if everything works as expected, we should notice the value on the tester gradually begin to decrease. This decrease will indicate that the process is working properly. Perfect, the value is decreasing, which shows us that the temperature sensing probe is working. Otherwise, in the event of an error, we would have discovered that this particular temperature probe was not functioning properly, and therefore, as a result, we would have needed to replace it with a new one. Wahiji. Finally, to conclude, this type of error, F04, can also be caused by an issue related to the connections, possibly on the electric heating element or the probe. Furthermore, if we do not find any problems or issues with these components that we have just carefully checked, it could potentially be due to an issue or malfunction with the electronic control board.